Some relationships are easy to understand because the other person clearly does not care. The harder ones are the ones where they do. They remember the small things. They know when something is wrong before you say it. Sometimes, when you need them, they show up in a way that makes you think, this has to mean something. When you are together, the affection does not feel fake, and if you try to leave, they may be genuinely devastated. Which creates a very difficult question. How can someone feel this much for you and still not seem able to choose a life with you? That question can keep people in relationships for years, because every time the relationship disappoints you, you have evidence that you should leave. Nothing is moving. The same conversation keeps happening. The future remains vague. And then something happens. They tell you how much you mean to them. You have an extraordinary weekend together. They panic when they think they might lose you. They say something about the future that sounds exactly like what you've been waiting to hear. And suddenly, the case is open again. Maybe they really do want this. Maybe they are just scared. Maybe what you have is too meaningful to walk away from. And you may not be imagining any of it. They may genuinely love you. The problem is that, do they love me and are they choosing this relationship are two different questions. And if you keep using the first to answer the second, you can spend years trying to solve a contradiction that is not actually a contradiction at all. A person can love you and still not choose you, not because the love is necessarily fake, but because love is only one part of what makes a relationship possible. We ask love to prove too many things. If they really loved me, they would commit. If they really loved me, they would know. If they really loved me, they would make this work. And when they don't, the easiest conclusion is that the feeling itself must never have been real. Sometimes that is correct. People can lie. People can manipulate. People can enjoy being wanted without caring very much about the person who wants them. But sometimes, making the love false makes the situation simpler than it really is. Because real feelings do not automatically create compatibility. They do not create courage. They do not create emotional capacity. They do not guarantee that two people want the same kind of life. Someone can miss you intensely and still prefer freedom over commitment. Someone can feel safest with you and still be unwilling to build the kind of relationship you need. Someone can be terrified of losing you and still repeatedly make decisions that keep you at the edge of their life. Someone can mean every word when they say, "I love you," and still not turn that feeling into something the two of you can actually live inside. That is the distinction. Love can exist almost entirely inside a person. They can feel it privately. They can think about you constantly. They can miss you every day. They can treasure what you have. Choice eventually has to become relationally visible. Not perfectly, not through constant proof, but somehow. Because choosing a relationship is not primarily a sentence someone says about it. It is a pattern the relationship leaves in their life. When they make plans for the future, do you exist inside the calculation? When there is conflict, is the relationship important enough to repair? When priorities collide, is the shared life something both people try to protect? When uncertainty appears, do both people participate in resolving it? Or does one person have to live indefinitely with that uncertainty while the other retains all their options? Choosing someone does not mean always choosing them first. It does not mean sacrificing your career, your friendships, your autonomy, or every other important part of your life. Healthy relationships still contain two separate people. But when a relationship has actually been chosen, it changes things. You account for it. You protect parts of it. You sometimes compromise because of it. You repair because of it. You make certain decisions differently because this other person is no longer just an experience you have. They are part of a reality you are building. That is why affection can be so confusing. Someone says, "I have never felt this way about anyone." That may be completely true, but it tells you about the intensity of the feeling. It does not tell you what they are capable of doing with it. They cry when you finally say you cannot keep doing this. Those tears may be completely real too. Losing you may genuinely hurt them. But pain at losing someone is not the same thing as being able to build a workable relationship with them. Someone can desperately not want an ending and still have done very little to create a sustainable middle. The same thing happens with the future. You talk about where you might live, the trip you will take, what your lives could look like in 5 years. Those conversations matter. But there is a difference between imagining a future and organizing the present toward one. Possibility is powerful because it lets you experience the future before anyone has actually chosen it. For a few minutes, you get to live inside the version where everything works. And because that future feels vivid, it becomes easy to treat the fact that you talked about it as evidence that it is already becoming real. But imagining preserves almost every option. Choosing begins to close some of them. Choosing creates responsibility. It asks people to make decisions before every uncertainty has disappeared. And this is how a relationship can contain enormous amounts of feeling while remaining strangely motionless. It also explains why mixed signals are so difficult. We assume that if someone sends contradictory signals, one of them must be false. Which person is real? The affectionate one or the distant one? But sometimes, both signals are real. They feel close to you in one moment. Then they become frightened when the relationship asks for more. They miss you when you are gone. They feel constrained when you return. They want the connection. They also want the freedom of not fully organizing their life around it. That does not automatically make them deceptive, but it can make the relationship deeply contradictory to live inside. And this is where focusing endlessly on their internal feelings keeps you stuck. You become an investigator. What do they really feel? What did that text mean? Why did they come back? You keep searching for the one true signal that will finally resolve everything. But sometimes, the inconsistency itself is the information. Not because inconsistency proves they do not care, but because it tells you what their care has become in practice. A person can have profound internal conflict. You can understand that conflict. You can even have compassion for it. But you still have to live in the relationship their conflict produces. This is one of the traps of understanding someone very well. The better you understand why they struggle to choose, the easier it becomes to confuse explanation with progress. Maybe commitment activates an old fear. Maybe closeness is genuinely difficult for them. Maybe they have never seen a healthy relationship. Maybe they really are trying. All of those things may be true. But understanding why someone cannot reliably meet you does not automatically turn being unmet into something you can live with. And this is not only about waiting for someone to use the word commitment. A relationship can have every conventional marker and still leave one person fundamentally unchosen. You can have the label. You can live together. You can have anniversaries. You can even be married. And still discover that when important decisions are made, the relationship is treated as the most disposable thing in the room. The career move is decided alone. The family boundary is never defended. The same injury happens repeatedly because repair never becomes important enough to change anything. One person constantly adapts while the other person's life remains almost untouched. That is why being chosen cannot be reduced to status. The reverse can also be true. Two people may not yet have reached whatever milestone everyone else uses as proof, but they consistently show up. They make decisions together. They protect the connection. They take each other's needs seriously. They repair after conflict. They make room. The relationship has weight. That pattern may tell you more than any single declaration. The difficult part is that love itself keeps pulling your attention away from the pattern. You ask, but do they love me? And maybe the answer is yes, so you stay. Then it hurts again. You ask the same question. Again, the answer appears to be yes. And because the love keeps surviving, you begin treating it as evidence that the relationship must eventually become workable. But love is answering a different question. It tells you something meaningful exists. It does not tell you what that thing is capable of becoming. A more useful question may be, what is this love actually able to build between us? Can it create reliability? Can it tolerate negotiation? Can it make room for both people's needs? Can it turn repeated apologies into different behavior? Can it move from an imagined future to shared decisions? Can it withstand the moments when loving each other does not feel easy? Sometimes the answer is yes. People do grow. Relationships move through periods of uncertainty. Someone may genuinely need time before making a serious commitment. A difficult season does not mean a relationship is doomed. But they might eventually cannot remain the answer forever. At some point, possibility itself becomes part of what you are being asked to live on. And people can survive on possibility for a very long time, especially when leaving feels like denying everything that mattered. Leaving can feel as though you are saying, "None of this was real. You never loved me. I wasted all that time. I was foolish to believe you." But you do not have to make those claims. You are allowed to hold two truths at once. They may have loved you, and you may have loved them. There may have been moments between you that were exactly as meaningful as they felt. The relationship may have mattered enormously, and it may still have required you to live indefinitely without something you eventually realized you could not keep living without. Consistency, commitment, reciprocity, a shared future, or simply the experience of not having to repeatedly ask whether the relationship was going anywhere. Sometimes, nobody needs to be the villain. Sometimes, two people can care deeply and still be unable to create something that works for both of them. One person may be offering the most they genuinely can, while the other is still being asked to live with less than they can accept. Neither fact automatically cancels the other. The question becomes whether the relationship that actually exists, not the feelings underneath it, not its best moments, not its possible future, is something both people can reasonably live inside. And sometimes, the answer is no. That answer does not require you to rewrite history. You do not have to turn every tender memory into manipulation. You do not have to decide they secretly felt nothing. You do not have to hate them enough to leave. You do not even have to stop loving them first. Sometimes, the hardest relationship to leave is not the one where you discover there was never any love. It is the one where you finally stop asking love to answer a question it cannot answer. Maybe they did love you. Maybe part of them still does. Maybe what existed between you was real. But love tells you that something meaningful happened between two people. It does not, by itself, tell you whether those two people can build a life that works. Eventually, the question may no longer be, was their love real? It may be, what has that love actually become? You do not have to make the love false to admit the relationship was not enough.